Welcome to A Climate Change, the show where we talk with change makers and thought leaders who are taking action to stop the existential threat of climate change. I'm your host, Matt Mattern. Today on the show, we have California Senator Ben Allen joining us once again. Senator Allen has authored environmental laws, including the landmark legislation is helping reduce plastic waste in California. This law is literally the model for the rest of the world, and other countries are copying this law to reduce plastic waste around the planet. This is a big deal. He joined me to talk about crucial issues at stake in the upcoming election, which is now less than a week away. Side note, make sure to go out and vote. During the episode, we discussed Harris and Trump's vastly different stances on climate policy, economic impact, and the future of American democracy. Senator Ben is always amazing, and I think you're really going to like it. Enjoy the show. Senator, it's been great to have you back. You've been on the show a few times, and always love talking with you. Tell us from your eyes what's happening in the presidential race, and can you give us some insight from an insider's perspective?
Yeah, I think all of us have been going crazy thinking about what's going to happen. I was watching David Brooks the other day who made some comment about how he's never seen an election start as a tie and get even closer. I mean, it is so close. It is so close that that nobody has any idea how to predict this thing. Of course, it's really coming down to 6 or 7 swing states and maybe even just 4 or 5 of them. And it's just going to, what's so crazy about this is that the leader of the third world, the leader of the free world is going to be determined by such a hair. And it could very easily come down to things like, what's the weather like in Philadelphia that day? It's scary for those of us who know how important this is. For me, it's so clear who the right choice is. And it's hard for me to get my head around how many people seem to feel otherwise. And then, of course, it seems to be really coming down to who can get those folks who are pretty unpolitical to care and turn out. That's going to ultimately be what determines the outcome here. We've got a pretty, half of the electorate is determined to vote for her. Half of the electorate's determined to vote for him. And yet, then you got these folks that typically don't participate in the process or are a little turned off to the process. And they're going to play a huge role in determining who becomes the next president.
What do you say? What's your message to them? Give me your 1-minute pitch to somebody who's kind of turned off the system, isn't tuned into politics. What do you say to them?
Yeah, I think on the one hand, you got a guy who's all about himself, a total megalomaniac. I'm a convicted felon, all those kinds of things, who's a charlatan, who has just played working people his entire life. And then on the other hand, you have someone who was raised with humble means and has devoted her entire life to public service, to making lives better for people. The choice is really stark from my perspective, but I understand that there are a lot of people who feel as though the system hasn't worked for them and they're turned off to it. I guess I would just say that that the kind of chaos that we saw on January 6th could become much more of a thing in the United States if Donald Trump wins the presidency. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, he was president before; everything was fine." Yeah, but you know what? We were protected from his worst impulses by a lot of the folks that he had around him, none of whom are going to be in the room this time. He's now surrounded himself by yes men. He's purged the party of any independent thinking, and he's really setting himself up toward it's too strong perhaps to use the word dictatorship, but everyone who works with him seems to think that that's where he would ideally lead his administration. And so please care about American democracy. Please care about the future of civility in our country, and please vote for Kamala.
Yes, and I was thinking, I saw somebody interviewed who was in Georgia, and they were saying, "Hey, I'm voting for Trump because I'm concerned about my 401k, and I'm thinking that's so nonsensical. The market is up at a record high. It's like, come on. If you're voting for your economic interests, your 401k has never done better under, Biden and Harris. So that doesn't make any sense. And you add to it, what's Trump's economic agenda but to raise tariffs and throw 10 or 11 million people out of the country, which all economists say both those actions will tank our economy. So he's an idiot. I mean, he doesn't have any common sense. And as far as handling the economy, he's an idiot.
Totally. And I mean, and of course, I think the problem here is that he's played a successful rich guy on TV for years. And so people have confused that persona as an actor on The Apprentice, ordering people around looking authoritative, with the actuality of the story, which is that he was handed, a silver spoon in his mouth and has actually squandered it.
$450 million. $450 million.
Right. And he's actually been bankrupt many times. And so, I like to think that you and I could have done a lot more, both for ourselves and for the economy and for jobs, if we'd been handed the benefits and advantages that he was. Instead, he's really, nearly everything he's touched has turned to disaster, and I just don't want to see him do that to our country.
Well, his former chief of staff came out, and I'm blanking on the Marine general's name. General Kelly came out yesterday, interviewed by the New York Times on tape, saying that Trump was basically a fascist, and that he was completely untrustworthy, and that he called this woman who died serving for our military an effing Mexican. I mean, where are the boundaries here? I mean, this disqualifies anybody for holding office at all. I mean, period.
It's just loco. I mean, and Matt, it must be particularly frustrating. I know you've been a lifelong Republican. I know before, at least. I mean, you think about the honor.
Now I'm a registered independent. Okay. I just want to put that on the record.
All right. But weren't you a Republican at one point? Yeah, you were.
Yes, I was.
All right. But you think about the honor and the dignity of a man like Ronald Reagan or Gerald Ford, Dwight Eisenhower, to think, and even more recently, folks like John McCain and Mitt Romney, Bob Dole, honorable leaders. And to think that the party has now, fallen in a trance to this guy. It's a sad story. It's a really sad story.
It is indeed. So tell us a little bit about, kind of from an environmental standpoint, how do you see this playing out if Trump were to be elected?
Well, that's one of the areas where I'm most concerned about, quite frankly. I mean, this is a guy who's so deeply in bed with big polluting corporations, has routinely said that he wants to make life easier for them to pollute. And you contrast the two records, right? I mean, Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords almost immediately. He continues to push back on the movement toward electric vehicles, even though it's a major job creator and innovation creator for the United States. He continues to advocate for doubling down on fossil fuels. He appointed anti-climate Supreme Court justices who recently ruled to scale back the regulatory power of agencies like the EPA to protect the public. And then, as we've been talking about, his approach to the rest of the world, I think, will have spillover effects that won't just impact the global economy in ways that you just alluded to with regards to tariffs, but our global leadership on the environment is so important. Why would other countries that are in a lesser stage of development ever want to prioritize decarbonizing, doing their part in addressing the climate crisis if the United States isn't going to do it? On the other contrast, you look at the Biden-Harris record, where they rejoined the Paris Climate Accord on day one in office. They launched the National Climate Task Force to meet all these important greenhouse gas reduction goals, reaching carbon pollution-free electricity goals, a net zero economy, the 30 by 30 initiatives, Justice 40. Of course, all the legislation that is putting a major investment into climate-friendly technologies, investing in clean energy and electric vehicle production and infrastructure, really helping to reinvigorate a lot of our moribund industry, in green, in the green space. This has led to, I think, nearly 600 new clean energy manufacturing facilities and tens of thousands of good paying green jobs around the country. And, EV sales are now shooting up. I think we just hit 1 million annual EV sales 3 years earlier than people were forecasting. So there's sort of this bright future that we could move toward that is about job creation and really investing in not just American innovation, but California innovation, because we all know that California has been at the heart of the green economy in so many ways, versus this kind of darker vision that's doubling down on moribund industries. I mean, you realize that there's more jobs in the California solar industry than there are nationwide in coal. And yet, there's this continual doubling down on an old model. But of course, I do think, getting back to your earlier question, that we have to do more to reach out to and engage with and ensure that there's good training and good opportunities for all those folks who are in those old industries. Now, my wife's from Ohio. I've spent a lot of time in Northeast Ohio, in an area that's very Rust Belt. And it is exciting to see new investments happening there from some of the new companies that are taking advantage of all of these incentives that were put in place by the Biden-Harris administration to invest in American manufacturing in the green economy. And it's exciting to see, and I really want to see that progress continue.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, and there's tremendous innovation in the country, and Trump would do his best to probably try to stifle it because he's both uneducated about the environmental problems, and he's just ideologically opposed to it because he's quite frankly stupid. I had Mayor Rex Paris on the show the other day, and he made some news kind of by saying, hey, he clearly saw that Kamala Harris was the better candidate on environmental policy, and he's a Republican. And he's also said that Republican Party is in the bed essentially for big oil. And it's not anything new, but this is something new for a Republican official to admit that the Republican Party is, essentially bought and sold bought and sold by big oil.
One of the many things that's sad is how much they are willing to defend and deflect and prevent big oil and other major polluters from being held accountable for the impacts of their pollution. My father-in-law died of cancer, spent much of his life living on the Ohio River on the border between Ohio and West Virginia. A lot of people die of cancer in that area. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's because of pollution from big corporations in that area. And it's sad to see so many working people being impacted by the effects of pollution and the inability and the unwillingness of so many people in government to hold these folks accountable and actually get them to shut down the pollution that they continue to foist upon a lot of people living in working class parts of the country. And you contrast that to Kamala Harris, who as Attorney General took the lead in a number of lawsuits against the nation's largest oil companies for issues such as misinformation campaigns, coastal oil spills. She went after Volkswagen for their for their emissions test cheating scandal. She went after oil over leaking fuel storage tanks and air quality violations and other big polluters. And that's ultimately about making sure that working people have access to cleaner water and cleaner air. She did similar things, capping, I think the recent administration has been capping tens of thousands of idle oil and gas wells and, taking action to reduce exposure to PFAS, which is this chemical that gets into people's bodies and creates all sorts of problems, including cancer. Prioritizing funding and clean drinking water infrastructure. Again, it's sort of, are you in bed with these industries that want to continue to pollute and make people sick, or do you want to hold them accountable and take them to task?
Yeah, I think that's a good point and something that should resonate with kind of working class folks, that big corporations are not out to protect them. And I think that was something that for generations, people who supported Democratic tickets recognized, and now it seems that there's millions or tens of millions of people who are working class folks who are willing to vote kind of against not only their economic interests, but their personal health interest to support a candidate who cares not at all about their health or their welfare.
Look, I think we are now the victims as a society of a very well-financed misinformation campaign, some of which is actually being led and directed by foreign enemies, quite frankly, that continue to push out lies and misinformation that's detrimental to working people and to American society in general. And of course, some of this is being heavily financed by the fossil fuel industry. I mean, the Koch brothers, of course, are deeply embedded and deeply invested in leaders in that space. And there are a lot of others that just continue to spend a lot of money pushing out propaganda or tamping down the truth about their impact on our environment. And it's nefarious. And I just hope
I read an article about. I was reading this article that these two Texas oil billionaires who are kind of, allegedly Christian, supporting and every far right wing cause they can, and actually going after people who were 95% rock-ribbed Republicans and throwing them out of the party, essentially, and primarying them, unless they gave 100% deference to these two crazy billionaires, they were out. And that's kind of the future of this, where this movement is going, it looks like.
We can't let it happen. We can't let it happen. And it's why really getting engaged in this election over the next couple of weeks is just so important.
Well, tell us, what do you think are the things that people can do, listeners can do to activate, to help out and support the Harris ticket?
Yeah. Well, I'd first say, if you are a committed Christian, go back and read the Sermon on the Mount 3 times and reflect on whether, on whose message, whose priorities are better in line with the liberating message of Jesus. That would be one thing I'd start with. But look, I think there are lots of ways of getting involved. Obviously, donations are always helpful. But there are a lot of grassroots headquarters, Democratic headquarters that have sprung up all over the place. Certainly in my district, there's a number of them where people are going every single day to make phone calls and text bank. We're organizing bus trips to Arizona and Nevada for people to knock on doors in those 2 states. I mean, we happen to be very close to 2 of the most consequential swing states in the country. And so there are people who are organizing to go out there. Obviously, if you have any other reason for your family or friends, you want to go to Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, by all means, go out there. But if you need to do, even from home, there are programs that you can log on to through the various Democratic organizations that are out there to just make phone calls. And ultimately, it's just about reminding people to vote. These are lists of people that they've identified as highly likely to vote for the Harris-Walz ticket if they actually make it to the polls. But sometimes that little nudge makes a difference. I remember last election, I had many conversations with people that just needed a little bit of information. Oh, where's my polling place? Oh gosh, you know what? Yeah, I'll go down and vote. I mean, we're talking here about, for you and I, Matt, I mean, we're really into politics. And I would think that, a lot of people who are listening to this are as well. So it's hard to get yourself into the mindset of someone for whom really it's an open question as to whether they're going to vote or not. And a lot of it's going to come down to what's going on that day. Here in California, we've made it extra easy to vote. You can vote by mail. You can go to the vote center. The vote centers are open for 10 days before Election Day. You can go anywhere in the county. It's really easy to do. But in a lot of other states, you can only vote in one place, in one location on Election Day. And, if something comes up at work or your kids get sick or, you're running late, you may not end up voting. And, that extra push, that extra nudge from somebody giving them a phone call or sending them a text or sending them a note, it really can make the difference in determining whether they're going to make it to the polls or not. And, this election is really going to come down to those folks that are, not really sure whether they're going to vote or not. We're not really sure whether they're going to vote or not. Unfortunately, a lot of Democrats are in that category. So just, go, if you want to get involved, contact one of your local Democratic headquarters, and they will put you to work. And one of the really fun things to do, if you got the time, is to go to door to door. And it's a really great way to get to know another part of the country. I mean, when we travel to other places, you usually go sightseeing or you visit family, but walking neighborhoods, in an area like North Las Vegas, for example, as I have done, just gives you such an interesting insight into our country and why people are the way they are and why they think the way they think. And just talking to people at their doorsteps is a really, I've always loved doing it, and I gain a lot from it.
That's old school democracy in action. So, I appreciate your service and the call to action to others, because I think it's going to be a turnout election, and whichever party turns out their voters is going to win this thing. So we've got to do the heavy lifting, the maybe not so easy stuff of making phone calls and knocking on doors and reaching out to friends and family members that, who are maybe low propensity voters and saying, hey, come on.
I got to tell you, I mean, it is so, it's hard to describe how close this election is. It is so close. I mean, there's just nothing like it in modern American history when you talk to the people who study this. And so it really, I mean, it's scary. And of course, I do worry about what impact that's going to have even if Kamala ends up winning, it'll probably be close, and there'll be, we all know Trump's propensity toward chaos, and what that's going to look like in the post-election weeks. But the nice thing about it, I guess, is that it does provide every one of us with an opportunity to make a difference. I mean, if this thing could come down to literally hundreds of votes in Nevada or Arizona, and you could know that if you went out there and you spent some time in Phoenix or Las Vegas, wherever else, just persuading some people to go vote, you could literally have personally played a role in making a difference in determining the leader of the free world. And that's a pretty special opportunity if you think about it.
So Trump has made the argument that, California is a hellscape and things like this. A lot of fear-based. I mean, his whole kind of, campaign is based upon fear, from what I can tell. I mean, it's like it's going to go to hell in a handbasket without me. But I'm standing here in California today, and I don't think it looks like a hellscape.
No, he actually came to my district where he has a beautiful golf course down in Palos Verdes, and it was funny because as he kept calling it a hellscape, he kept saying, "Oh, but this place is great. I mean, I got a beautiful place here. Come golf here." It was just funny to watch because again, to your point, when you come here, and of course, in Trump's case, he has both a vested interest in attacking the state and also a vested interest in pointing out its beauty because he's got a business here that he wants people to come to, and that juxtaposition is stark sometimes. Look, we know California it's like anywhere. There are problems here. We can and must do better. But this is also such a wonderful place. It's a wonderful place to live and raise a family. I'm raising my kids here. I love this state, and I'm committed to this state. And it makes me kind of sad. I was reading some stuff about during the Rose Bowl game, right? So it was Alabama versus Michigan, and some families were coming out from Alabama to watch the game, and and a lot of they were interviewing. The LA Times was interviewing these folks from Alabama. And they were saying, like, look, I really was very scared about coming to California. I was so, I almost didn't come. I love Alabama. I was so excited about them going to the Rose Bowl. But man, I almost didn't come because I was just so frightened by what I'd heard about what this place was like. And I came here and it's so nice and everyone's so friendly. It's such a great experience being at the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl. And it was both heartening and touching, but also so sad to think that that we've gotten to this point where we just think of each other as so, we think, the idea that these folks weren't going to avail themselves of this really special opportunity to come watch their team play, in the Rose Bowl and enjoy a wonderful New Year's Day here in California because of just this crazy amount of misinformation that they're being pumped with out of Fox News and other sources. It was both nice to know how much their experience contrasted with that imagery, but most people in the country aren't going to have that chance, and they're just fed on this diet of anti-California propaganda. It's just so ridiculous. So I really, among many things, I hope that we can find a path out of this that just brings us together more and that's more focused on our commonalities.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, as they say. Tell us what you're working on in the environmental space in the state legislature.
Yeah, well, so many things. I mean, obviously, right. So one thing I'm working on with regards to the election is Proposition 4, which is the bond measure that we have on the ballot that I was very involved with. It's a measure. So I wrote SB 867, helped to negotiate it. It's a bond measure that's going to put significant investments into making sure that California is more climate resilient. So it's water infrastructure and wildfire resilience and clean energy, those kinds of things. So making sure that we're better prepared for the impacts of climate change to come. I'll working on climate policy, working on toxins, working on extended producer responsibility programs, trying to make sure that polluters and producers have more of a role to play, more skin in the game, more accountability associated with the end use of their products in a wide range of subjects. I mean, I did a big bill on plastics with that extended producer responsibility model in mind, but we're also looking to expand that to EV batteries, to solar panels, to household hazardous waste. Just got a bill across the finish line in that space with regards to paint care, paint products. So ultimately trying to get industry involved in helping us come up with solutions for the end use of their products. And then, open space preservation, all of those kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of really good, and then PFAS too, as I mentioned, this carcinogen that is this chemical that's getting into so many products that we really need to get a handle on. It's getting into our bodies. It's a forever chemical. It never goes away. There's lots going on in the environmental space in California. Again, one of the other reasons why I'm quite frankly concerned about the possibility of a Trump presidency is because while other White Houses, both Democrat and Republican, have given California a lot of deference and discretion in the past to go off on our own and lead the way with regards to environmental protection, Trump has repeatedly threatened to take that discretion away. And there's a number of federal waivers that have permitted California to go its own way. He tried to mess us up. We were able to push back through some allies, on both sides of the aisle. But I really do worry, given some of the changing dynamics, that it would be harder for us to preserve our independence with regards to environmental policy if he wins the White House.
Right. And it's so important because not only California for itself, but I think it's 16, 17 other states have followed California's lead, which then represents 60% of the market,
right,
which creates a huge national coalition, which leads the world.
We move markets and in a way, and let me just give it a very tangible sense of how important that is. Back when I was born, kids growing up in certain parts of urban LA, for example, were growing up with half of the lung capacity compared to kids growing up in rural parts of the country because of how bad our air pollution was. And, California said enough is enough. Automobile industry, we know you have the technology to do better. And yet we also know that you're not going to do it unless you get pushed to do it. And so we're going to force you to clean up your act and reduce pollutants that are leading to the untenable levels of smog that choke the air of Los Angeles and make it hard to even see the Hollywood sign. So we did that. We changed the rules. The automobile industry had to clean up its act. It actually made cars burn cleaner around the world because once they adopted our technology, that we forced upon them, other jurisdictions forced it upon them. And then by then they were already producing the cleaner cars and everyone wanted them. And so it actually made things better. So in fact, now you look at LA, there are actually far more cars on the road in LA than there were in the 70s. That's another problem we can talk about. But the air is significantly cleaner. And the question is, do we want that is so much. And as a result, kids now have larger lungs than they used to have because we have clean air.
It's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing that good legislation can lead to such positive outcomes across the planet because of, farsightedness. Well, because the industry's not going to do it themselves. They just won't. But, they need to, because nobody, because
why would they?
If one car company were to do that, then they'd have a competitive disadvantage to the other car companies.
That's exactly right. And the interesting thing is
you have to set the same rules for everybody.
You're absolutely right. And they're actually, what I've found in my negotiations with industry on environmental issues is most of the time, at least the best, the big ones, the best ones, are very open to new regulation. They just want to make sure it applies to everybody. It's about a fair playing field. They know they can do it, but they don't want the competitive disadvantage, as you say. And so that's what happened with our air quality rules. That's the idea behind so many of the regulations that we're promulgating. We want to make sure that we do them in cooperation with industry, but move the ball forward. They know it's actually good for them and good for the environment, and actually not bad for the market. But they need us to step in and do it, because that creates a level playing field.
Okay. Well, always following you, and wish you all the best. We, think you're one of the great public servants out there, and appreciate your service to our state and to our country.
Thank you, Matt.
It really makes a difference.
Thank you. I have always appreciated our great dialogues, and I love your. I love the fact that we're able to come to just find so much common ground. Even if we may come at certain issues from different perspectives, it's refreshing. And I wish we could have more of these conversations at the national level right now.
I think one big move towards that is electing Harris, and hoping that Donald Trump goes off into the sunset, and a saner Republican Party could evolve. It may take some time, but certainly not with him at the helm.
And I think, I love the fact that she's talking about bringing a Republican into the cabinet. I think that will be, that was something that used to happen, but now I think it will be done with a lot of thoughtfulness and focus, and really with a mind toward rebuilding a better democracy for our country, which seeks to bring people together as opposed to divide.
We're going to end on this high note, and thank you, Senator. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and wish you all the best going forward, and anything we can do to help, let us know.
Thank you.
And that was Senator Ben Allen. If you haven't done so, make sure to vote. This is a very, very important election. Don't know how to vote? Visit vote.gov to register and find your nearest polling place. To learn more about our work at A Climate Change, and how you can help us reach our goal of planting 30,000 trees in the Amazon this year, visit aclimatechange.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. See you next time.